Is India becoming a dictatorship? A question many of us are asking ourselves today. It's a question that's not born out of thin air, but from a series of worrying signs and trends. From media manipulation that silences opposition to the undermining of elected party authorities, to the use of investigative agencies for political gain, and even the suppression of the right to protest. The list goes on. There are increasing concerns about the democratic state of India, fueled by unsettling instances of power play, control mechanisms, and secrecy. We'll be touching on these themes and more as we delve deeper into this pressing question. We'll examine the allegations of horse trading, the overstepping of boundaries by governors, the withholding of funds from state governments, and the controversial issue of electoral bonds. But before we delve into the details, let's first understand what a dictatorship is and how it operates. A dictatorship, in simple terms, is a government ruled by a single authority with absolute power. Imagine a world where one individual or group holds all the reins, making decisions that impact the lives of millions without opposition or critique. This is the stark reality of a dictatorship. Key characteristics of such a regime include the suppression of opposition, either through manipulation or intimidation. The media, often the voice of the people, finds itself under severe control or influence, its freedom to question or critique significantly hampered. The misuse of power is another alarming feature. This could manifest in various forms such as unethical deals, undermining the authority of elected bodies, or overstepping boundaries in state affairs. In such a system, even investigating agencies could be manipulated for political gain. A dictatorship also thrives on secrecy, obscuring financial transparency, and sometimes even resorting to election fraud. The right to protest, a fundamental democratic principle, is often suppressed, and dissenting voices silenced. So, with this understanding, let's examine the situation in India. From media manipulation to MLA horse trading, the allegations against the Indian government are serious. Let's start with media manipulation. It's been alleged that the government has been using its influence to silence opposition. Case in point, the acquisition of NDTV, a major news network known for its criticism of the government by the Adani Group. Critics argue that this move was a strategic ploy to stifle dissenting voices. Next on the list is MLA horse trading. There have been accusations of unethical deals being struck behind closed doors to secure political power. These deals involve persuading MLAs to switch their allegiance, thereby undermining the democratic process. Then we have the undermining of the authority of elected parties. A recent example is the passing of the Delhi Service Bill by the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament. This bill gives the central government the power to appoint and transfer Delhi government officers, effectively diluting the authority of the elected regional government. Lastly, we need to discuss the alleged misuse of investigating agencies for political gain. It's been suggested that these agencies are being weaponized, used as tools to intimidate and silence opposition. Manish Sisodia and others have experienced this firsthand, with the Enforcement Directorate and the Central Bureau of Investigation accused of engaging in intimidation tactics. These instances raise questions about the integrity of governance in the country. With each allegation, the shadow of doubt grows larger, casting a pall over the world's largest democracy. The question that remains is whether these are isolated incidents or part of a broader pattern of power consolidation. As we delve deeper into these issues in the next scenes, we invite you to form your own conclusions. After all, democracy thrives on informed citizens. Another alarming pattern is the alleged overreach of governors in state affairs and withholding funds from state governments. Imagine a scenario where the governor of your state, a figure who should ideally be a neutral arbiter, starts interfering in the day-to-day affairs of the state. Sounds puzzling, doesn't it? But this is what's happening in some parts of India. Governors, who are supposed to act as the constitutional head of a state, have been accused of overstepping their boundaries and meddling in state affairs. In the past, we've seen instances where governors have been accused of acting at the behest of the central government rather than in the best interests of their respective states. This overreach, not only undermines the authority of the elected state governments, but also threatens the federal structure of the country. Now let's turn our attention to another contentious issue: the withholding of funds from state governments. In a diverse country like India, where each state has its unique needs and challenges, equitable distribution of resources is crucial. However, there have been instances where the central government has been accused of withholding funds from state governments, particularly those led by opposition parties. This has led to an outcry about partisan politics being played at the expense of development. For instance, the Modi government's alleged attempt to cut the revenue share of states has been a point of contention. Critics argue that this is yet another tactic to centralize power and weaken the states that are not aligned with the central government. These actions seem to reflect a disturbing trend towards centralization of power. But it's not just about the concentration of power. It's about the erosion of democratic values and the undermining of the federal structure. It's about the potential for misuse of power and the threat it poses to our democracy. It's about you, me, and the future of our country. The right to protest is a fundamental democratic right, but here too we see troubling signs. The suppression of protests in India is a stark example. Let's take the farmers' protest as a case in point. The government's response was not of dialogue or negotiation, but of barricades, water cannons, and tear gas. It was a disturbing demonstration of the government's unwillingness to listen to dissenting voices. Moving on, another alarming trend is the obscuring of financial transparency with electoral bonds. These bonds, introduced under the guise of clean, transparent funding, have been shrouded in secrecy. The anonymity provided to donors enables them to influence policy behind a veil of secrecy, raising serious questions about the integrity of the democratic process. This has led to accusations of India's democracy being sold to the highest bidder. Lastly, we cannot ignore the allegations of manipulation and fraud in elections. The horse trading of MLAs and the undermining of elected parties' authority are tactics that betray the very essence of democracy. The passing of the Delhi Service Bill, which gives the central government the power to appoint and transfer Delhi government officers, is a clear example. This move not only undermines the authority of elected parties, but also centralizes power, a characteristic feature of dictatorships. These actions not only undermine democratic norms, but also erode public trust in the government. India's diversity is its strength, but is this diversity under threat? Let's delve into the one-party, one-nation debate. It's a concept that seems to hint at unity, but critics argue that it conceals a more sinister agenda. They fear that it could lead to the marginalization of minority voices and the concentration of power in the hands of a single entity. The use of religion as a weapon is another alarming trend. Religion, which should ideally be a source of solace and unity, is sometimes manipulated to stir up conflict and division. The propagation of Hindu-Muslim propaganda is a case in point. These tactics not only serve to polarize society, but they also raise concerns about the secular fabric of the nation. In a democracy, the media plays a crucial role in holding the government accountable. But is this role being compromised? Let's examine the scenario. The media is often seen as the fourth pillar of democracy. But what happens when this pillar seems to lean towards one direction? Allegations have been made about the Indian media being controlled to silence opposition, like the example of NDTV, a news channel known for its critical stance against the government, allegedly being bought by a pro-government conglomerate. Moreover, the absence of open press conferences by the Prime Minister raises questions. In a thriving democracy, the leader should be open to scrutiny and questioning by the press, but this appears to be lacking in the current context. Furthermore, it's been observed that the media often overlooks the negative aspects of the government. Critical issues like unemployment among the youth, misuse of investigating agencies for political gain, and suppression of protests are often underreported. A free and fair media is crucial for a functioning democracy. Its absence can lead to a distorted reality. So, is India becoming a dictatorship? The evidence suggests a worrying trend. We've discussed the manipulation of media, unethical political deals, the undermining of elected authority, and the misuse of investigative agencies for political gain. We've also highlighted the overstepping of boundaries by governors, the withholding of state funds, the suppression of protest rights, and the obscurity of financial transparency through electoral bonds. The question of India becoming a one-party, one-nation state, the role of media, and the absence of open press conferences by the Prime Minister were also examined. It's crucial to remember that the essence of democracy is in its checks and balances. It's in our right to question, to stay informed, and to hold our government accountable. As citizens, we must resist attempts at brainwashing, religious manipulation, and the propagation of divisive propaganda. The youth, the future of our country, deserve opportunities and not joblessness. Let's continue to question, to learn, and to demand transparency. We urge you to share this video, raise awareness, and play your part in preserving the democratic spirit of this beautiful country.